This is a brand new YouTube video made on February 23rd for TE 826. And I would like you to read the chapter 3 on building background. We've done lesson preparation. And I'll be frank, the videos, I want you to watch the video for this particular section on building background, but it's not very good. It's not a very good video. It's kind of strange. If I remember right, the lady's trying to use dropping the atomic bomb and how that is like telling on your friend when they're going to go out and do something bad. I don't see any connection at all. It's a very strange example. So I'm going to talk about something a lot more concrete. Let's say you have a group of ELs in the class, and this would work for non-ELs too. It doesn't have to be anything with language. But for English language learners, usually because you're dealing with a different culture, a whole different set of expectations in that culture and different backgrounds, it behooves you. I love that word, behoove. Sound like something with a horse, behooved. It's beneficial to know as much about your students and make connections because that allows you to find out what is important and what is motivating to them. And then maybe you can make connections across cultures, or you can make connections across interests, like the kid loves cars and mechanics, and you decide you're going to teach physics, but you're going to use an example in your physical science class in middle school. We're going to talk about velocity and cars and how fast they go. You could design it along that, and it'd be something to draw their interest. Or if it's in a dance class, you'd want to find out the dances or their musical background of the students. That would be music, the arts. The arts would be good if you were talking about painting or ceramics. Beautiful, rare ceramics, long history in South America or in other parts of the world, how people made clay, how they found raw clay and shaped it. And did they bake it or did they leave it just to dry in the sun? Things like that. You can teach history with that, or you can teach art with that, or you can do both at the same time. Obviously, art, music, and things like that seem like a natural fit for certain cultures, but that's because that's what we think and stereotype. It's just kind of stereotypes and ideas we have about those cultures. So I like the culture map. One thing I'm going to ask you in your discussion is how you'd make connections, but also how you go about finding out so you could make connections. You may have students that have had traumatic experiences or occasionally educational experiences, or students who have a background in parts of the world that you would want to use their background to teach about, say, Africa, about wild animals, because there are people, I've had students that have been attacked by lions. That's not something very common. You don't get, we're going to find somebody who's had that happen. I had students that have been involved in civil wars, lived during a civil war in their homes, and would go back and forth while people were shooting each other. That was in the Lebanese Civil War back in that would have been around late 1970s through the early 80s. A lot of different groups in Lebanon, Beirut, Lebanon. We'll go into that. But I had students that would talk about their friend was behind him and he was shot and killed. The bullet missed them and got him. What else? Language is a great one. Obviously, you have a natural connection if you have Spanish speakers in the class. You have a Spanish class in school. You can make connections there. Sometimes you can have those students help kind of educate, your high school Spanish class, which you guys were probably in and didn't get a lot out of it, but it would have been great to have native speakers help. What are some other things? I think experiences, bringing in the community, the families, talk about their traditions would be useful. If you're teaching a sociology class in a high school, or teaching about cultural traditions in a middle school or even an elementary social studies class, and you want to talk about people from different parts of the world, ELs could be a great resource for you. So their background can connect very readily to the background of others, and providing a real life component to what was kind of a theoretical concept, you know. I've given some examples here. I don't really have in front of me because they're on my screen, off screen, but the constant need to find out what's important to your students and then share that with the class. And then maybe you can take things that you're teaching and that can connect with what the student's doing. I think I put one on there about stores and institutions in town, the library, the bank, churches. You may, in your class, you're essentially teaching maybe ELs. It's not a newcomer class necessarily, but that would be part of it, is that you want to teach them about your town, about what are the rules and what do people do in Tecumseh, Nebraska on a Sunday afternoon, or why do people go to the lake and why do they have boats and why is this important? And then find out what they do. What do they do on their days when they're having either a holiday or something? And you know they have many cultures, they have marvelous celebrations on holidays, either religious or cultural or something. I remember they have several, and I can't remember what the name of it is, but if you have students from India, they throw colored dust, I think it is, and they get it all over themselves, and they're green and they're red, and there's a name for this, and it's a holiday. It's one of the gods in the Hindu gods. So that would be a cool thing to explore. Religions would be a great thing to explore. I'm certainly one that doesn't believe in avoiding religion in school. I think we should, I don't believe in teaching one particular religion, but certainly exploring others and giving all of them full credit and knowledge, because they're part of what we are. They're part of our thinking and our culture, etc. So building backgrounds. I've seen really powerful lessons, which one of the most powerful ones, I think it's going to be in there, but it's not this one. But it deals with migrants and where you came from. And so it talks about colonization of the United States. And we have people from Portugal who really didn't come here in large numbers. Although now there are now Portuguese working in forgot, little town up in O'Neill, Nebraska, at the tomato and potato, whatever farms. They had an immigration rate. Now the people coming in to work are Portuguese. Well, where'd they come from? It's interesting, I know you don't have any Portuguese speakers. From what I've heard, they're not bringing families. It's just workers. So that's a little different. Doesn't impact school much. But anyhow, the lady connected the colonialization of America, Spain, England, France, and where they landed and what they did and what they were after. And some were after gold and some were ministering and establishing the church or whatever church they had, Catholic or, weren't a lot of Methodists at that time. I don't think the early English pilgrims were much into anything to do with that. But with saving souls, I think they were just mainly here to escape the English Parliament. But there's a lot there, and then you can do things like, I've seen marvelous exercises where people put a thread where they are in Lexington or whatever little town they're in, and then they take it to wherever their parents came from, and then they take another color of thread or a part of that thread, whatever, and then they wind it around to wherever their parents came from and their parents came from. And then you get this kind of a loom of a map with little threads moving all over the place. And of course, in Lexington, a lot of them go to Mexico or Central America. But some people, depending on who they were, if they do theirs, they may go to Denmark or Germany or Sweden or somewhere in Europe, or they may go to Canada if people came down from Canada. There have been several cases of that in Nebraska. People immigrating from Canada come down here, it's a little warmer, and there were wheat farmers. So that's a really cool project. And that's something you can get everybody involved in, and they can see their background. Anytime you can visualize something, whether it's physics or whether it's history, or whether it's some activity, dance or cooking or food or something like that, that's always a big plus. Appealing to the visual is very important. So I think building background's huge. I like those culture maps because you can use them with little kids and find out all kinds of things. And you can do a lesson on convenience stores versus grocery stores versus, different churches, or you can do a little comparison contrast. You can do mathematics. If they buy this here, how much it costs there. There's all kinds of possibilities for a lot of the skills that we're teaching in the schools. But I'm kind of leaving it up to you to, think in your own situation, your own particular place, what kind of connections you can make, because it's very important to make those connections. The brain makes connections in order to affirm knowledge and to create, blocks of knowledge in our brain, however it's organized. And it works in a larger sense that people can say that, well, this is different from my hometown, but what my parents told me my hometown was, but Lexington does have a lot of cattle. They don't have Plaza de Toros, which is a bullfighting ring. I always thought, why couldn't they have that? I mean, they kill 4,000 cattle. You think they'd spare a couple, but that wouldn't go over. PETA wouldn't like that at all. There's a lot of commonalities. I always thought. Now I'm thinking, okay, I'm committing a horrible oversight here. If you're in Europe or you're in Japan or some other country, these connections I've been talking about are very bound to the United States and even Nebraska. You may look for different connections, but still, that which is commonly shared among culture, especially I think in Europe, would be something to really look at, where people vacation, and maybe everybody knows about Greece because you can go to Greece if you're in Europe. You can go to France. A lot of historical things would be wonderful to have access to see that in the natural world there, the environment, the Alps and the Rhine River, Danube, things like that. That would be rivers, things like that. You can compare landmarks like that, or landforms, I guess would be the word. I don't know of anything else I'd like to add to it. Let's see how this hangs up, and I won't make this too long a video. I just realized I am recording. Sometimes I forgot, and that doesn't go too well. Okay, but on your discussion this week, I tried to make it interesting. I would like you to speculate, write a couple of paragraphs, do some real key thinking there. And I look forward to reading your discussion this week. I did the one for last week, which is all your stuff I did share. And what I think I'll do is I will erase any mention of, I can erase mention of you by name, but if you work in a certain school district or something, I may just go ahead and eliminate any mention of you, but I will label it, say this is a person working in Lex, or there's different ones of different places. Nobody's ever going to know, but I would eliminate it because your description of lesson preparation was so meticulous. I know it doesn't sound like it'd be exciting, but it really is. I read these and I thought, well, that's really different. Lexington, you take a small rural town like Ainsworth, or you take a place in The Hague, Belgium, and you compare it to Lexington, or you compare it to any of these places, you get totally different ESL situations. I mean, they couldn't be more different. Some are large and have all kinds of complicated parts to it, and they're very well organized, and they have scripted teaching and stuff. And others, they have a curriculum, but you have a lot of freedom to do what you want to do. And some of them are just barely in existence, and it's one person making the difference. So You know, if we were talking medicine, we'd have certain requirements to have a little hospital everywhere. Everybody would have the same thing. But ESL is still on the frontier. We're the Wild West or the Mild East, whatever you want to call it. And stuff is just now happening that maybe should have happened 10 years ago, or and some schools haven't got an ESL program and don't realize they'll need one, and maybe they'll never need one. You never quite know. That's what makes this interesting. I'm looking forward to reading about the programs in this week's ESL discussion. So thank you very much, and I'm really pleased with everything. And I want to mention this thing on the interview. Just get that to me. Oh, I forgot to put on Canvas. I know. I'll put it on Canvas. I thought I put it on there, but that may be me talking to myself, the echo. But I'll go ahead and put it on there. But take your time and put it on there when you're ready. I'm not interested in deadlines on this, okay? You know, usually undergraduates throw a fit saying, we got to have a deadline. You got to do it at a certain time, and there's points off if you don't do it. I said, you don't get points off in real life. You just get yelled at, which can be worse. I'm not good at yelling, so I won't do that. All right, well, thank you, and email me if you have any questions. Bye.